The U.S. economy took another serious blow in January. Numbers released today show the rate of inflation last month surged at its fastest rate in 40 years. The numbers are devastating for working families trying to put food on the table, and despite claims that the economic misery would be transitory, inflation shows no signs of slowing down. We're going to take a look at the latest economic carnage in tonight's Hold the Line. Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. What a shock. The Biden administration's terrible when it comes to the economy, making you poorer, making you less prosperous, you, the American people, suffering as a result of the so-called Build Back Better agenda they've got in place. Not really. No, not at all. In fact, here's what we know. The Consumer Price Index shows a 7.5% surge. Just to put this into some historical context, this is the highest, fastest rate of inflation since 1982, I believe. So we're going on about 40 years, pretty much as long as I've been alive, since we have had inflation looking like this. Now, you understand, of course, that this means that the dollars in your bank account are getting eroded. They are worth less. They are slowly evaporating in value with each passing month. In fact, it's not really that slow, 7.5%. That would be considered, if you were up 7.5% in your 401k in a year, pretty solid year, right? But you're losing instead. You're losing the dollars you have in the bank every month that passes. And what does this mean also in terms of the expenses that you are incurring in your home? And remember, this was all predictable, folks. We'll get into why, but this is what was going to happen because of the out-of-control spending that Democrats thought they could get away with without the realities of the inflation that we're seeing. So consumer prices, how is that affecting folks, right? Or how are folks seeing those effects day to day? Used car prices up 40%, 40.5 actually. Gasoline up 40%. Meat, fish, eggs up 12%. Electricity up 10.7%. Food at home up 7.4. Food away from home up 6. Housing up 4. So everything that you need in your day-to-day life is getting more expensive. Now, it's not complicated to figure out why this is happening. The government is spending too much money. The government is spending your money. Inflation is caused by monetary policy. That's what's happening in this country right now, right? That's the primary driver of the inflation that we are seeing. And it's also eating up whatever wage gains you have out there. So that this is a graph that can show you exactly how this is happening. See, it's outpacing the increase in wages. So right now you are, even if you're making a little bit more money on paper, you are losing buying power, you are losing your economic stability. It's getting worse because of the inflation that we are seeing. Now, what is the Biden regime going to do about this? This is a big problem for them politically. People see the inflation in their day-to-day lives. They feel it in their checkbook, at their credit card bill, when they're going to buy gas or groceries. They go, hold on a second, why is this getting so expensive? And they don't like it, right? So it's not that Democrats are willing to admit that their economic ideas are essentially warmed over Marxism and that this is stupid. No, instead, what they want to say is, don't worry, we've got this under control. They were saying it was transitory, turned out not to be. So what are they saying? Oh, it's basically going to be transitory this time around. Don't worry, it'll go away. Here's a Biden economic advisor who's saying, inflation's going to come down, just watch.
I expect inflation to come down significantly in 2022. Now, more to the point, that's not just my expectation. That's the expectation of every forecast I've looked at, and it's very important. Basically, what the forecasts tell you is that the job market should stay tight and get even tighter, supporting wage growth, while inflation decelerates, while it slows. So virtually every forecast has inflation growing about half as fast this year as it did last year. Now, half as fast still might take you above the Fed's target. But if that occurs, that's going to be a real sign that some of our interventions, some market interventions, are helping to ease these price pressures.
Market interventions. Yeah, you can trust this Biden regime to do smart things when it comes to market interventions, just like you can trust them to do COVID interventions that work so very well, right? The masks and the vaccine passports and all that. Totally. Oh, wait, that's right. higher caseload from COVID this time last year to the day. More cases, a lot more cases, in fact. And this last January was the third highest monthly total for COVID deaths we have ever seen in this country. So the COVID interventions didn't work out well, but now they're saying the economic interventions are going to turn inflation around. And oh, by the way, why not? Here's the Biden economic advisor Bernstein again, trying to combine these issues. Inflation is caused by Omicron, he's saying. Watch.
I remember very clearly our conversations over the summer when you were talking about inflation being transitory. It was not. Are you guys being clear-eyed enough about what is going on here?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the thing to recognize is that our team, at the insistence of the president, is focused on not just the month-to-month ups and downs, but on the underlying trends. And there you have to appreciate the fact that
but
GDP
I'm talking
growth,
about underlying trends. The trends are not...
Well, and
go ahead.
So that and so that's the point. We're going to get some months that come in better, some months that come in worse. Probably when the president said that, Omicron wasn't quite in the picture yet. So you know, the virus is still upon the land.
Notice how he's just speaking in circles. You know, the thing to think about is to consider that on a month-to-month basis, when you annualize it over a long period of time, the economy is going to be a situation of economic factors. He's not saying anything. Because what is he going to say? The Biden administration sucks at this? They're not going to say that. That's not a surprise. So now they got to come up with something. Omicron he throws in the mix. Yes, Omicron, sure. Meanwhile, Biden is telling everybody, don't worry. You know what the government's really good at? Making stuff less expensive. If you believe that, you haven't paid attention for, ever. Here he is saying they're going to lower the cost of childcare and health care, and they're going to pay for all your stuff. So don't worry about the inflation so much. Watch.
The fact is that we're in a situation now where, you should have peace of mind. I know food prices are up, and we're working to bring them down. As I said, I grew up in a family where the price at the pump went up, you felt it, and I understand. But these things are necessities. We're working to bring down prices where they're not totally what families, in fact, have to pay now. You still have to pay for child care. Child care is a cost for millions of families. You still have to pay your prescription drug prices. You still have to pay for health care. You want to lower the cost of living for people, help them in those areas.
Lower the cost of living by controlling prices? Price controls have a very ugly history. Just go check out how they helped out so much in Venezuela. Price controls that the government institutes? No, the market institutes prices. And the monetary system also has this whole issue of inflation that allows for people to understand the more money that is spent, the more inflation that is out there, the less your dollars are worth, spent by the government, I mean. They have no idea what the hell they're doing, folks. The whole thing is just a total mess. Here's 56% of Americans, by the way, in the latest CNN poll, saying that when they're asked what President Biden has done that they approve of, nothing, they say. 56% said nothing, 15% said the economy, 6% said COVID, 4% said personal traits, foreign policy. I mean, they basically say Biden's the worst. So at least Americans are waking up to that who didn't already know it before this guy even took office, which a lot of us did. All right, a stunning piece in the Daily Mail is shining a spotlight on rampant drug abuse and decay in major cities around the country. Apparently in San Francisco, they're literally paying people to remain homeless. I'll have more on that with the host of Counterculture on the Epic Times, Danielle D'Souza Gill. First, I want to talk to you about protecting your online data. A lot of companies promise your privacy is guaranteed, but we know that's not true. That's why you need a new privacy and cybersecurity application tool called Secure. It's spelled S-E-K-U-R. Secure is using proprietary encryption and is offering instant messaging and email that is truly secure because all your information is based on servers in Switzerland. Big tech can't spy on you. Secure is never going to mine your data, never going to look through your stuff. Secure is your solution to the constant theft of your digital identity online. It costs only $5 for the messenger, only $10 for the messenger and email combination package. Go to secure.com and take back your privacy today. That's SEKUR.com and use promo code BUCK for 25% off. We'll be right back with more. Hold the line. San Francisco, New York, Los Angeles, Philly, D.C. So many major U.S. cities are in states of utter decay because of Soft on crime lunacy and a general attitude from Democrats that open air drug use, vagrancy, quality of life crimes, it doesn't matter, right? It's all fine. Well, in fact, a stunning piece in the Daily Mail makes the case the city of San Francisco actually pays homeless people to stay homeless while they sell lethal fentanyl on the streets. Watch this.
How long you been in San Francisco?
Since June. If you're gonna be homeless, it's pretty easy here. I mean, if we're gonna be realistic, they pay you to be homeless here.
You mean that literally?
Yeah. I mean, I get $620 a month, dude.
From general assistance,
yeah.
or what'd you get? How was that hard to get?
Phone call, bro. A fucking phone call. 200 food stamps and $620 cash a month.
Wow.
Forget about it. Why wouldn't I do it? Why would I want to pay rent? I'm not doing I got a cell phone that I have Amazon Prime and Netflix on. We used to battle with the cops. Now it's like the cops are, it's like they're your neighbor, you know?
Cops are like your neighbors while you're selling fentanyl in broad daylight. In this case, in the story, he mentions to teenagers. Here with reaction, Danielle D'Souza Gill, host of Counterculture. Danielle, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
The Democrats refuse to change course on these issues despite surging crime, the flight from cities, and I would argue because their ideology is the root of the problem. I mean, what else can we take from it when you see somebody who's saying he's choosing to live as a homeless person in San Francisco because there's all these great benefits that they're handing out to people in San Francisco, including not just the money, but the not enforcing of the law so they can sell fentanyl on the streets? It's pretty stunning.
It really is. And I think you're exactly right. It is the ideology of the left. But I think half of it is defund the police. And the other half of it is these left-wing DAs who refuse to prosecute crime, because even if the police, round up the criminals, which in some cases they aren't, but let's say even they did, the DA may not even prosecute them. But then if the DA does prosecute them, even then, if you have a left-wing judge, they might not even have any penalty. They might just get let go. So in a place like San Francisco, you have Chesa Boudin, who's a radical communist. He's the adopted son of Bill Ayers, the terrorist who tried to blow up the Pentagon. So he loves Fidel Castro. He loves Hugo Chavez. So to him, he is on the side of the criminals. And he loves the people who are wreaking havoc on the streets, because to him, they are his people and they further his ideology. Whereas in a place like New York, where you have Eric Adams, who's a very moderate Democrat, he then has to deal with the left-wing DA, and they're kind of in conflict there.
We were just watching that interview with a journalist sitting down with a homeless drug dealer out in San Francisco who's just walking through the whole process. He's watching his Netflix and Amazon Prime every month. He's got his cell phone. He's living on the streets, getting paid by the city getting paid $600 a month, as he says, by the city. On top of that, he's also a threat to public safety just from the fact that he is dealing fentanyl, which, as we know, is the biggest single part of the over 100,000 drug overdoses last year in this country. Here he is, this man describing, and clearly this man is somebody who needs tremendous mental health and other assistance, but here he is describing dealing fentanyl to teenagers. Watch.
These two kids came up and they're like, hey, do you guys know where to get any Oxycontin? They're like, I'm 15 and I'm 16. Like, I'm an old school junkie. How much money are you trying to spend? And they're like, we got $40. And I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to take your money. And I went and I got them fentanyl. And I brought it back and I set it down in front of them. And I said, this is a gram of fentanyl. This is enough to kill 6 people that have never used it. What I do to get high is this much. And I showed them how much I do. I was like, I'm keeping your money. And now I'm going to teach you how to save each other's lives, because you're not going to stop. I can't steer you away from doing it. But the best thing I could do for you now is give you real drugs and show you how to do it properly and show you how to save your friend's life. And I showed them how to pull up Narcan and how to inject each other with the Narcan needle in case they died.
I mean, he's talking about teaching 15-year-olds, not only is he getting them, selling them illegally fentanyl, which could kill them, but he is then also talking about using how they can use Narcan because of the likelihood that they will overdose because they're new to fentanyl. And this guy's just talking about this in broad daylight and says that the cops do nothing about it.
Right. And I think there are two disparities here. One, the left acts like parents are evil. They act like parents who don't want CRT being taught to their kids in school are evil. Yet this man is a great person and someone that they want their kids around and someone that they want to just continue to allow to do this. And then at the same time, the left acts like they're obsessed with health. They act like everything they're putting in place with COVID is because of health. But obviously, they don't care about health because in this case, this is detrimental to people's health. Yet they don't care. And they actually supply many of these people with the needles and the things that they need in order to continue this drug abuse.
I mentioned, by the way, the police and how this drug dealer and homeless man says that they don't do anything. I just wanted everyone to see. No, he really means the cops let him deal fentanyl in San Francisco. No big deal. Watch.
I've talked to the cops here. I'm literally 10 feet away from the drug dealers talking to you guys. Why don't you just go arrest them right now? And they're like, arrest him for what? And I'm like, dude, what the He's like, San Francisco is a sanctuary city. We arrest the Hondurans, we put them in jail, they're out 2 days later.
Right.
If they're letting the Hondurans deal on the corner every day, somebody's getting paid.
You hear that? I mean, he says that he's got illegal alien Hondurans, he's specifying, who are dealing drugs to kids on the street, drugs that are, in many cases, lethal, as we know. It's very easy to overdose on fentanyl. Just the cops are watching and saying, well, what are we supposed to do? It's a sanctuary city, and we've basically decriminalized drugs.
Right. I mean, their hands are really tied behind their back many of these times with cops because they do find the people, but then they just have to let them go and there's nothing they can do. And even in this situation, I mean, we see that this homeless man, he's clearly a very lucid person. He can explain all of this to us. So it doesn't seem like he's someone who needs to be homeless. He could get a job, it seems to me, but obviously he wants to be homeless. He actually likes it because he gets this money every month. He likes having Amazon Prime and Netflix and all these other things. So this is what happens when you have a society that is really just supporting this kind of lawlessness, and then he has his side drug business, I guess.
You think the Democrats are going to pay a political price for the destruction of cities, Danielle, coming up in this midterm election?
I hope so, because I think that so many people have suffered from this. We've seen that, businesses have been shut down. We've seen people's lives destroyed by the Democrats. They have the lowest approval they've had in years. So if we don't see some kind of pushback against this, I would be shocked. But I think a lot of people are leaving these cities because at a certain point, it's like, we keep trying to get these people out of office, but then somehow they keep, continuing these policies. So at a certain point, you just have to move. You just have to leave and say that I'm done because it's literally unsafe to live here. As he said, he's explaining how to give drugs to children.
Danielle, appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.
The Department of Homeland Security is warning that America could get its own freedom convoy as early as this weekend. That sounds great to me. Of course, this raises a question. Why is the Department of Homeland Security warning about peaceful protests? We're going to get into that in tonight's Buck Brief. The Department of Homeland Security has warned that a trucker convoy protesting vaccine mandates, similar to the ones that have taken over Canada in the past few weeks, could start in the U.S. on this weekend's Super Bowl Sunday. Let's break down exactly why DHS feels the need to warn us about these peaceful protests in the first place in the Buck Brief. The Freedom Convoy, the Canadian truckers, still going strong up north of our U.S.-Canada border, of course. And Justin Trudeau's government doesn't seem to have any answer for what is still a peaceful and very effective form of protest, getting a lot of attention. Canadian media is almost all state media, so they're doing everything they can to undermine the protests or to cover them with the maximum degree of scorn. But they're still going strong, and it doesn't seem like it's going to change anytime soon. The Canadian truckers are changing the game right now. And down here in America, there are some truckers, some other folks who are paying attention to this. New York Post reporting that the Department of Homeland Security, however, has warned that a trucker convoy protesting vaccine mandates, similar to the ones that have transfixed Canada in recent days, could start in the U.S. on Super Bowl Sunday. A bulletin warning of the potential protest was sent out to law enforcement officials on Tuesday. Why would this be a warning exactly? Why would this be a warning that we have here when this would be a peaceful protest, a law-abiding protest for the most part? Perhaps blocking traffic is something that they would be cited for, but it's certainly non-violent and certainly something that we've seen the left employ as a tactic many times in the past. Yet here is DHS Chief Mayorkas on a possible freedom convoy. Let's see if he keeps to his word on this one. Watch.
The anti-vax trucker rally in Canada, they've made some threats to come down here. Are you prepared for that?
Individuals have a perfect right to exercise their First Amendment rights. Once they intervene in other people's freedoms and liberties, it becomes a more complicated landscape. But we're working with law enforcement to address any eventualities.
A more complicated landscape. What does that mean exactly? How is that going to go? Well, I think that a trucker convoy in this country would be great if it were done the way that it is up in Canada so far. This is working people who have been doing their jobs for the whole pandemic, have been keeping the American economy, in the case of Canada, of course, the Canadian economy, going, and they want normalcy. They're not radicals. They're not calling for an overthrow of society or destruction of the system. They want their normal lives back, as do so many of the rest of us. And I understand for libs, it's hard to accept that all their interventions on COVID were massive authoritarian failures, but that is where we are. Otherwise, explain how we have the end in so many states of these pandemic policies, despite the fact that we have higher caseload than we did a year ago. The science didn't change, the politics did. People are realizing in large enough numbers to threaten the apparatus of power for the Democrats. People are recognizing they're a bunch of dumbasses and they never should have done these things to all of us in the first place. But that would be honesty. We're not going to get honesty from these libs. We're going to get the same propaganda that we've seen in the past, the dishonesty that has defined so much of what they've done. Here's just a sense, going back to the Canada convoy for a moment, of how, remember, these are working class people, working class folks who have come together and had a protest that is increasingly popular in Canada, by the way, and public opinion polls show this. And you'd think the left, with their whole Workers of the World Unite and all their Marxist claptrap, would be all in favor of workers standing up for rights, but here's how the media talks about them. Watch this one.
Sedition, insurrection, a threat to democracy.
This city is under siege. They are now calling it an occupation.
Alarming situation there in Ottawa.
The police chief is calling it a nationwide insurrection driven by madness.
This is kind of our insurrection by air horn moment. I think it's part of the globalization of Trumpism.
Canadians know where I stand.
There hasn't been as much violence as some had perhaps projected, but that does not necessarily mean that it has been peaceful.
Reports of severe vandalism and criminal behavior.
Streets are clogged. The honking is incessant and deafening.
This pandemic has sucked for all Canadians.
Residents that I have spoken to who say they feel terrorized, intimidated.
These anti-vaxxers actually took food from the mouths of the homeless.
Hungry, yeah.
Because they're so put upon.
There have not been any violent outbursts. However, horns have been honking for 12 to 21 hours a night.
Many of them are holding Confederate flags.
I've heard there's QAnon supporters in the crowd.
We've seen swastikas. We've seen the Confederate flag. We've seen flags with Justin Trudeau, our prime minister, in a noose. Lots of Donald Trump flags as well. People chanting, "Let's go, Brand."
Wait, lots of Confederate flags? I've spoken to people at these protests. They haven't seen any Confederate flag. It's also Canada, so there's that. Outrageous. But Trudeau's called them Nazis. They're being smeared all the time because they are so effective. You even saw some of it there with these are people standing against the apparatus of control, the massively failed apparatus of control from the COVID pandemic. And they want to make sure that they can somehow connect this to the January 6th insurrection. Here's MSNBC doing what they do over there, like the psychotic libs they are.
You know, they're looking into the idea that maybe going after these specific militias and calling it a day, that might not do it. Just taking down the leadership of the Oath Keepers isn't going to stop a broader swath movement of anti-elitism or anti-authority in general. And that's what you're seeing right now with both the trucker convoy, anti-vax protests, not just here, but in Europe as well. There is this idea that there's this global cabal that has control over everyone's lives and that all these groups have to come together in this sort of populist rage to take it over and overthrow it. That's how this stuff has evolved since January 6th. And that's what these investigators are looking at. They're not saying this ended on January 6th or that it began on January 6th. That was a blip in this whole wider anti-authority movement.
What? I mean, January 6th, Canada, blah, blah, smoke and mirrors, anti-authority movement. People want their lives back, you little lunatic, because all the crap that you made us do, the double masking and shutting down schools and all this stuff, didn't do a damn thing. And everyone's sick of the crap. Stop being cowards, libs. Let everyone go back to life. That'd be a good start. China's coming under fire for its treatment of foreign Olympians after several athletes who tested positive for COVID-19 were placed in quarantine and complained of really awful conditions. When we come back, Gordon Chang stops by to explain why this is par for the course for the CCP. But first, let's talk about protecting your home. 100% of the equity in your home can be stolen by cyber criminals. You realize that? Once it's gone, years of hard work and savings are wiped out in an instant. The FBI calls home title fraud one of the fastest growing crimes, which is why you need to go to HomeTitleLock.com, America's leader in home title protection. Here's the problem. The deed to your home is the only document that proves you own it, and the deeds to all our homes are online now. In minutes, a criminal can forge your name off the deed to your home and refile as the new owner. Like one new homeowner spent a fortune in legal fees when a thief forged himself onto the deed to his home and took out loans against it. Look, you need Home Title Lock. Home Title Lock is your peace of mind that the deed to your home is protected. Visit HomeTitleLock.com. Again, that's HomeTitleLock.com. We'll be right back with Gordon Chang. Stay with us. Olympic competitors have taken to social media or notified their home countries about a lack of available or edible food, as well as a lack of transparency regarding China's coronavirus protocols. Here's a picture of what one quarantined athlete, Valeria Vaznetsova, has been eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner 5 days straight. Some pasta, charred meat, potatoes, no greens, 5 days in a row, every meal. China will continue to operate under a zero-tolerance coronavirus policy while hosting the Olympics for the next several weeks. How's this all going? Joining me now is the author of The Coming Collapse of China and the Great U.S.-China Tech War, Gordon Chang. Also find him on Twitter at Gordon G. Chang. Gordon, good to see you.
Thank you so much, Buck.
So, how's it going over there for the Olympics? What are some of the key takeaways, Gordon? What are you seeing?
One of the key takeaways is it looks like Beijing is trying to disadvantage foreign athletes. And this is just not a coincidence. This is not a mistake. This is, I think, intentional. Because you know that Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, spent a lot of time making sure that these games would go off well. I mean, they've looked at every detail. And what we have seen is, I think, a determined effort. Got to remember that China insisted on draconian COVID protocols, much stricter than the IOC wanted. And that's given China the opportunity to take a lot of foreign athletes out of the games. And by the way, we haven't had reports of Chinese athletes being quarantined, so you got to be extremely suspicious.
By the way, we showed a little bit of that athlete who was quarantined, her meal. Apparently, after investigating the food being served to other personnel, athletes were being served worse meals. Valeria Vaznetsova shared a photo of her team doctor's food, which included fresh fruit, a salad, and prawns with broccoli. So wait, why would the athletes be served worse food? I mean, are they really trying to make the athletes over there from foreign countries miserable so they can't compete as well?
The question is, what other explanation could there be, Buck? And I think that the answer on that one is obvious. You know, the United States, I think, understood what China was going to do, so we brought our own food. And so Americans are actually getting pasta, but many other teams didn't. And so what we are seeing can only be consistent with an intent to make sure that foreign athletes can't compete.
There's also been some very interesting commentary in the American press about this, particularly the sports media, which I think a lot of people are seeing increasingly is very left-wing, very quick to talk about social justice and human rights in America in some capacity, whether it's exaggerating violence from the hands of law enforcement here or whatever the case may be, but a lot slower to criticize anything going on over in China. Here's ESPN regular J.A. Adande. Gordon, listen to this.
J.A. Adande, as a fan and then as a reporter, how do you reconcile enjoying this competition while also considering everything I just said?
Now the concerns about diversity and the allegations and the questions about competitive integrity even, all of that, and yet we're still enjoying the games. And who are we to criticize China's human rights records when we have ongoing attacks by the agents of the state against unarmed citizens, and we've got assaults on the voting rights of our people of color in various states in this country?
Who are we, Gordon, to criticize China and human rights? This is the American press.
Well, first of all, I'm sure that nobody in the American press is committing genocide. So this is a question, if you want to compare state policies, well, take a look at this. I mean, China is committing genocide. They are killing Uyghurs, Turkics, and other Kazakhs and other Turkic minorities. There is crimes against humanity of rape, slavery, torture, forced organ harvesting. These are state policies, and it's not just a few people. We're talking about millions who have been imprisoned in those camps. We're talking about children being put in separate camps of their own. There is just no comparison. And for someone to make those comments, one can only say that they're extremely ignorant or they're working for the Communist Party of China. But this is just completely, I just don't know what word to use for that.
NBC worked as something of a mouthpiece here as well, pushing Chinese Communist Party propaganda. This was during a live broadcast of the Olympic opening, Gordon. I want you to hear what NBC, the Peacock Network, long established legacy media brand, here's what they said about China and the developing world. Watch this one.
Yeah, it's worth remembering that while Western countries may be boycotting these Olympics over human rights issues, China styles itself as a champion of the developing world, and it has plenty of support in countries from Africa to Latin America, where its investments are building up local economies.
China's a champion of the developing world, according to NBC. It styles itself as one.
Yes, if you're going to start to talk about those issues, then there has to be they've got to have a reckoning with the crimes against humanity, with the genocide, with what China is doing across the board. We haven't seen such a dangerous regime in decades. What the Chinese are doing is comparable to the Third Reich prior to the mass exterminations of 1941. So if NBC wants to start to talk about these issues, it needs to have a broad coverage of them. And that was a failure of the Peacock Network.
It's not just the media, Gordon. As you know, there are prominent politicians in this country who seem like they, if not are taking China's part in some of these disputes, certainly don't want anyone to make too much noise about what you're talking about. Here is third in line for the presidency, Speaker of the House, unfortunately, Nancy Pelosi, telling U.S. athletes, shut your face when you're over there. Don't say anything. Watch.
As I say, as I wish the athletes well, I do not encourage them to speak out against the Chinese government there because I fear for their safety if they do.
Now, I guess there's an argument you can make here that maybe they should fear for their safety if they speak out, but it doesn't seem like Nancy Pelosi should necessarily take that position. Shouldn't she be speaking out? What do you make of it?
Those words, we don't know what was in her head, but whatever it is, she's making it clear that China is not safe for athletes, and it's not safe for Americans, and it's not safe for anybody. So the question is, why are we holding the Olympics there? Why are we subjecting our athletes to an unacceptable situation? Nancy Pelosi, the way those words came out, she even lost Al Sharpton's support. So you can imagine that this was just a failure on her part. This failure is across the American society, as we have seen from the things that you have played just now. And it's a real indication that the Americans don't understand the maliciousness of the Chinese regime. And we're going to lose our republic, Buck, unless we start to understand how China is attacking the United States. Because obviously there's a lot of people here who sort of view China in this extremely benign light and are willing to say things that are completely unacceptable.
Gordon, always appreciate the expertise. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Buck.
When we come back, the woke fascists are taking aim at eating meat. Don't mess with my meat. Calling it sexist and racist. These people have any joy at all in their lives? We have the video for you in Quick Hits. A woke author argues that eating meat is sexist and racist, and students in a Washington State high school are taking the fight against mask mandates into their own hands. We got those stories in Quick Hits. Let's get to it. So, I like meat. I cook it. I eat it. It's delicious. I'm a fan of it. Not everybody is, apparently. And some people take it beyond just an issue of personal preference or a dietary thing into something that is much more political. Author Carol Adams, I've never heard of Carol Adams before. Is she famous, guys? Is she a person that people know? I've never heard of her before. Anyway, who cares? She argues in this clip you're about to watch that eating meat is, sexist and racist.
The assumption that the best protein comes from corpses is a racist belief. How do you know the animal would have picked you to feed off their corpse? 21st century animal eating requires our complicity in a new colonialism. These events especially affect girls and young women. Your hamburger comes with a dose of misogyny. Popular culture is flooded with references to sexy cows, sexy pigs, sexy chickens, sexy fishes, who all just want to have fun. Meat eating is also one of the ways gender-based structures of oppression are perpetuated.
The woman's amazing. Is she for real, guys? Is that a real thing? She's a feminist author? She's being serious? That wasn't a... Wow. Wow. That was awesome. Like, I couldn't make fun of feminism better than she did by being a feminist author there. That was absolutely fantastic and highly enjoyable. I don't even know. I can't top that. Can't top it. All right, up in Washington State, high school students, because, they're sick of wearing dumbass masks on their faces, which don't stop the spread. And sorry, all the data is on my side, not their side, the mask lockdown lunatics. So kids are having enough of this. They're saying enough is enough, and they're actually staging walkouts. Here they are in Washington State. God bless these kids. Watch this one.
We want this to be a peaceful, respectful movement. We are just trying to gain back our rights as citizens. It comes from the state. Now, what we're hoping is that they kick us out. This sounds bad, but we're hoping that they kick us out because they have to report that attendance to the state. And if the state sees a day where 100 or I don't even know how many kids are here are absent, they're going to start asking questions. Everybody is going to meet at the back row of the senior parking lot, and we're all walking into the school with no mask on. You can get me in trouble. They can suspend me. I don't care. We're done with this. And obviously all of you are too. We're doing this peacefully and respectfully. If a staff member asks you to put a mask on, you say no, thank you, and keep walking. And if they kick you out, then go home.
This kid's amazing. We got to find, he's a senior, I know, at this. I would love it. Guys, can we see if we can track this guy down? I'd have him on the show. I mean, he's fantastic. I feel like this kid's going to run for president one day. We should be so lucky. Look at the idiot who's president right now. We could do a lot better, that's for sure. So that's a reality that I'm so glad, though, they're doing walkouts and refusing to just go along with the stupid mask thing in schools anymore. Remember, it's it's never really masking the way that they pretend it is when they do these laboratory studies, because kids are going to take their masks on and off, and when no one's looking, they'll have the mask off, they're going to be breathing in the air, they got to eat, the whole thing. It's so dumb, folks. It's all about compliance, and it's an anxiety napkin for neurotics who subscribe to the Washington Post and watch CNN. It's pathetic. That's why they never debate this stuff. And I would crush anybody in a debate over masking, because they're actually not really even masking the way that you would have to even pretend that it could help. And then when you look at the size of the virus versus the size of the mesh for, say, a cloth mask, and then you look at the data, look at all of it, it's just all so stupid. And I'm sorry that the libs are all so panicked and so cowardly. All right, here we go. 2 Ottawa natives bust the media narrative on the trucker protest. Now, this is very important because they're lying about these truckers all the time. They hate the fact that this is a working class grassroots movement that is a direct challenge to the authority of the Canadian authoritarian state. Here are a couple of Ottawa natives who are just going to talk to folks to see what's really true and what's not. Watch.
I am in full support of the protest because I've actually taken the time to come down and speak to these people, get to know them, get to know why they're here, and hear their stories, which is what a lot of people aren't doing. And I believe that most people that are just spewing out hate and all this ugly language towards these truckers, those are the people who are staying at home and not making the effort to come downtown and talk to these people.
That's exactly it. So we heard of all these people from across Canada coming here for whatever reason they have. So we said, you know what, let's go out. Let's talk to all of our neighbors from across the country. And so far, every single person we have met has just met us with so much love, so much understanding, so much peace, and they've made me cry so many times just hearing their incredible stories for what they're fighting for.
See, that's what happens when you actually go and do what the journos won't do because they're too busy smearing this convoy. Go and talk to people, ask them why they're there. And you have a very different view of it, as those two individuals just explained to all of us. Joe Biden is at his lowest ever in terms of the average of polls support for his administration, lowest ever average of polls for his Joe Biden doing a good job across the board. He's bad at this, and we all know that this was always going to be the case. Joe Biden's a joke. He's a clown. He's not somebody who should be in charge of anything. But because he's a clown, we might as well have some fun at his expense. Here's comedian Kyle Dunningham's Biden parody. Watch this one.
The President of the United States. My fellow Jamaicans, our nation is in crisis. The Decepticon variant Hobo-19 is still killing fat people. Inflation is destroying our fart jars, and now that Ukraine is being sexually raped. That is why I've asked Congress to order a full-scale attack on Joe Rogan. Not Joe Rogan, the Russian guy. The guy with the shirt. Pootie Tang, man. He's a bad dude. We gotta come together, man. Get this guy. He's got our cranes. He's got all the cranes. We need him for the better build back. The build back better. The better build back better plan, man. You say it 3 times fast, pal. You say it.
That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is next. Shields high.